Okay, let's dive into a figure whose name might not be, well, instantly familiar to everyone today, but whose impact really shaped the world we live in and how we think about news. We're talking about the legendary Edward R. Murrow.
Absolutely. And for this deep dive, we've got a stack of source material that really lets us pull back the curtain on Murrow's life and career. Our mission really is to dig into those sources, pull out the most vital insights, maybe some surprising details too, and understand why he's still such a crucial figure, even now.
It's quite a journey, too, isn't it? We're going to trace his path from, well, incredibly humble beginnings, right into the terrifying heart of wartime London, onto the cutting edge of television, and then leading up to a confrontation that honestly kind of helped redefine the power and the responsibility of media.
Yeah.
You're going to see how, through courage and integrity, just one voice made an extraordinary difference. So where does this story start? It's not in some fancy newsroom you might expect.
No, not at all. Edward Roscoe Murrow, born April 25, 1908, way out in a place called Polecat Creek, North Carolina.
Polecat Creek. And from a modest Quaker family, the sources say.
Right. Very modest. And it wasn't an easy start. The family actually moved west to Washington State, specifically looking for work, for better opportunities. That tells you a lot right there.
And his youth wasn't exactly sheltered. The material shows him doing pretty tough manual labor, picking beans, logging trees.
Yeah, real physical work.
But even then, apparently his sharp mind was obvious. It's such a contrast to that, dignified figure we picture later.
It really is. He eventually made his way to Washington State College, WSU now, studied speech there, got involved in the student government.
Ah, okay.
You can sort of see those skills starting to build, that powerful voice, that knack for storytelling. It was clearly there early on.
It's interesting, though, that broadcasting wasn't his first thought. He considered law.
Apparently so. But it feels like that natural gift for, public speaking, for communicating.
Yeah.
It just sort of pulled him towards radio, almost inevitably.
Right. And that path eventually led him to CBS in the late 30s.
A pivotal moment. With war looming in Europe, they send him overseas. And this is where he really started to, write his own playbook for reporting.
How so? How did he stand out right away? Because the sources describe him doing something pretty different.
He totally changed the game. Instead of broadcasting from some safe, distant studio, he insisted on being right there, in the field.
In the thick of it.
Exactly. Reporting from bombed-out buildings, blacked-out cities. He wanted to convey not just the facts, but the actual feeling, the experience of what was happening.
And during the London Blitz, that sounds, well, the material describes it as truly groundbreaking.
I was.
Reporting live from rooftops with bombs actually falling nearby. That's just hard to even imagine today.
It really is. I mean, think about the sheer courage that took. And his voice in those broadcasts, incredibly calm, collected, but underneath you could just feel the urgency, the passion, the honesty.
This is London.
Yeah. For Americans back home, hearing that voice cut through the static,
Yeah.
it wasn't just news updates. It was their first real human connection to the terror, but also the resilience of people living through that.
It made history feel immediate, didn't it? Not like something you read about later.
Exactly. He wasn't just summarizing events, he was bringing you into them. And that credibility he built during the war, it wasn't by sensationalizing, it was by telling the unvarnished truth he saw that built this huge level of public trust.
A trust he carried forward. Because after the war, he didn't just, sit back.
No, he kept innovating. As television started rising in the late 40s, early 50s, Murrow made that leap, radio to screen.
Bringing that same integrity to shows like See It Now and Person to Person. And See It Now? That was really something else, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely revolutionary. It basically invented modern, long-form investigative journalism for TV. He used it to take these deep dives into really crucial, sometimes uncomfortable issues.
Like what?
Things like the lives of migrant workers, segregation, early civil rights struggles, problems in education. The sources stress how he approached these with real depth, genuine compassion, and always this commitment to fact-based reporting.
And that commitment to facts, that depth, it led him to maybe his most defining moment, the confrontation that really showed what media could do, not just inform, but actually challenge power.
Right. We're talking about that critical 1954 broadcast.
Yeah.
Taking on Senator Joseph McCarthy.
At the absolute height of McCarthyism, a time of intense fear.
Oh, yeah. Fear, unsubstantiated accusations, just ruining careers.
Yeah.
A real chilling effect on any kind of dissent.
And Murrow, on national TV, calls him out. That sounds incredibly risky. How did he even approach it?
It was incredibly risky, but the sources describe it as just a masterclass, not just in journalism, but in like strategic truth-telling. Murrow didn't rant or rave or make his own accusations.
Right.
No, he did something far more powerful. He simply, calmly, methodically presented McCarthy's own words and actions, used unedited clips from the senator's speeches, his hearings.
So he just let McCarthy speak for himself, essentially. Why was that the tactic? Against someone so good at twisting things.
Well, that's the genius of it, isn't it? In that climate of distortion and innuendo, Murrow's method was like the perfect counter. By showing the unedited source material McCarthy's own voice, his own statements, Murrow wasn't arguing against him in the typical sense.
He was letting the evidence speak.
Exactly. Letting the verifiable facts, McCarthy's actual behavior, reveal the pattern, the abuse of power, the fear-mongering. It shifted the focus completely. Away from Murrow's opinion onto the undeniable evidence from McCarthy himself. It showed how transparency, letting the primary source speak, can just cut through manipulation.
Wow. And that broadcast ended with those famous words, "We must not confuse dissent with disloyalty. We cannot defend freedom abroad by deserting it at home." Still gives you chills.
It really does. That closing statement, combined with the evidence he laid out, it was a turning point. The sources are clear on that. Public opinion started to shift. Others felt emboldened. It proved that media, when it's committed to facts and public service, could stand up to even the most intimidating figures.
Beyond those huge moments, though, Murrow had this very distinct style, didn't he? The sources really emphasized that.
He absolutely did.
Yeah.
Understated, dignified, deeply ethical. That comes through again and again.
His core belief, journalism as a public service.
That was central. It wasn't about chasing headlines or, ratings at any cost.
Yeah.
He set this incredibly high bar for integrity. And you see his influence later, people like Walter Cronkite, they looked up to him. They carried some of that forward.
That thoughtful, ethical approach, it does feel a bit like a lost art sometimes today, doesn't it? But the lessons seem timeless.
Totally timeless. But it's interesting, though. Despite setting that standard, the sources also mentioned he wasn't entirely happy with where TV was going later in the 50s.
How so?
Yeah, he became quite disillusioned, actually. Felt the medium was leading too much into just entertainment rather than serious substance. He has a really direct quote about it.
What did he say?
He said, "Television in the main is being used to distract, delude, amuse, and insulate us."
Wow. Hearing that now, that sounds incredibly prescient, doesn't it? Like he saw it coming.
It really, really does. He later took on a role in the Kennedy administration, running the United States Information Agency, promoting American values abroad.
But still sticking to his principles.
Yeah, the sources show even there he remained committed to honest, factual communication, true to himself.
Such a dedicated life, but tragically cut short.
Yeah, really sadly. Years of heavy smoking, lung cancer. He passed away in 1965, only 57.
Just 57. But the sources really underline that even with his early death, his influence, his standard, it kept echoing. It still echoes.
Which, brings us right back to you listening today. Why does Edward Murrow's story still matter so profoundly right now in 2025?
Well, because we are just drowning in information, aren't we? And frankly, overwhelmed by misinformation, manipulated content.
Precisely. Murrow stands as this powerful, almost tangible example of what journalism should strive for. Being fearless, rigorously fact-based, and serving the public interest above everything else.
His story keeps inspiring people, too. You see it in films like Good Night and Good Luck, documentaries.
And the Murrow Awards themselves, recognizing journalistic excellence today.
And in an era where, AI can generate convincing voices, deepfakes are blurring reality, algorithms are feeding us these filtered headlines, the need for human voices grounded in that Murrow-style integrity.
That dedication to verification, right? To challenging assumptions, seeking actual truth.
It feels more critical than ever.
Think about his approach during the Blitz, again reporting from the field, verifying reality with his own eyes and ears. That basic principle, seeking primary sources, checking things firsthand. It feels so relevant when you're facing digitally manipulated stuff online.
And his tactic against McCarthy, using the subject's own unedited words. That's a powerful model for battling narrative distortion even today.
It's not just about fact-checking individual points, is it? It's about the whole approach to information, to truth itself.
And that warning Murrow had about media being used mainly to distract, delude, amuse, and insulate us. We are absolutely living in that future right now.
So, wrapping this up, what are the key takeaways from this deep dive into Murrow's life for you as someone consuming information every day? I think it's the importance of just pausing before you share.
Verifying what you see and hear.
Exactly. Seeking out credible sources. Recognizing that the loudest voice or the most viral thing isn't automatically the truth. Understanding that how a story is told, its source, its integrity that matters immensely. That's what builds trust.
He didn't just deliver news bites. He delivered trust through his methods, through his character. So thinking about Murrow's really sharp critique that media might just be used for distraction and insulation, how does his standard, his courageous, fact-based public service standard, how does that challenge the media landscape you interact with every single day? Definitely something to think about as you scroll through your feeds tonight.